Hey there, it's Leslie at Leslie's Cookies and Treats, and today Santa is getting off the leash and we're making puppy dog Santa cookies. This is one of 6 cookie tutorials using the same Santa cutter. But before we start, hey, do you know I also teach online cookie decorating classes? Join me this year and wow Santa with homemade holiday cookies. Following step-by-step video tutorials, you'll learn everything you need to know to make cute cookies just like these and have an unforgettable treat for Santa this year. Find out more details in the description. So I have a couple of different Christmas cookie decorating classes, so be sure to check those out. But today we're making Santa puppy cookies. So I'm going to start here by making a line where the fold is in the hat, and I'm just going to go over it twice to create some separation, and then we'll go ahead and outline the rest of the hat. So I want to touch down, lift my piping bag up just a little bit, and then slowly go around and pay attention to where the icing is falling rather than where my piping bag is going. And I'm kind of changing up my outline that I drew on the cookie with the yellow edible marker, so pay no attention to that. I'm going to switch colors to my white royal icing, and I'm going to outline the ball of the hat and the brim of the hat as well. And I'm just going to outline all of the different parts of my Santa puppy cookie. And I don't usually outline all of the sections first, but I'm doing this because I changed my design of what I was going to do on this cookie to turn it into a puppy. And I lost control of my icing there, so I just brushed that away with my paintbrush and then I started over. So again, when outlining sections, you want to just touch down with your icing and then you want to lift your bag up just a little bit and follow along the area that you want to outline and then touch down when you get to any corners or turns. And once all of the areas are outlined, I can begin flooding in some of the sections. I don't want to pipe anything right next to another section until that first section has had a chance to crust over and dry. So I'm going to be moving around a bit on this cookie. So I started by flooding in his ear. I'm using about a 15-second flood consistency royal icing. And I'm just going to use my scribe to shape that icing and get it out to all of the points. And I want to make sure that I cover up my outline, so I will also use my scribe to make sure that the outline is covered as well. Most of the time I do not want my outline to show in my cookies, so that is usually why I do not go ahead and outline everything first. So I'm going to let the ears dry while I go ahead and flood in the center part of the dog's face. And then I'll use my scribe to settle that icing down and pop any air bubbles and get it out to the edges and make sure that that outline at the edge is covered. And we'll let that white icing dry, so we'll move back up to the hat. And I'm just going to kind of go over the outline again because I don't want it to show. So I'm just going to outline that part and then carefully flood in next to the crease line that I made here because I don't want to cover that line up. That is one line I do want to show. And then I'll just continue flooding this in. Because my icing is thicker, about a 15-second consistency, I can go right up to the edge without worrying that it's going to overflow. And then as always, I'll use my scribe to move the icing around and get it right up to this crease line without covering the crease line, and I'll smooth it out and pop any air bubbles. And the ears that I piped earlier have already started crusting over, so I'm going to go back in with my brown icing and flood in the rest of the dog's face. And I guess I should say my white icing has also crusted over. I live in an area of relatively low humidity, so my icing crusts over pretty fast. It might take yours a little bit longer depending on where you live. So once I've flooded in those two sections, I'm just going to use my scribe to settle the icing down and pop any air bubbles. Then I'm going to set my cookie aside to dry for about 15 minutes, and once it's dried, I can come back in and flood in the hat brim like I'm doing now. I want to make sure to really fill this area in because I don't want any craters and I want it to be pretty puffy. And then I'm going to shape it just a little with my scribe. I don't really care if the icing is smooth because I'm going to go back over it later. Then I'm going to grab my black icing in a 15-second consistency and give my puppy a couple of eyes. I'm just going to put my icing down and squeeze until I make a dot. And then I will use my scribe to settle this icing down and make sure that it gets all the way down to the cookie and there's no air bubbles. I don't want a crater in my puppy's eyes. And then I want to give him a highlight, so I'm going to take my white icing and just put a little dot on both eyes. And then I'm going to go ahead and pipe in a triangle for his nose, again using my scribe to settle the icing down and make sure that it's all the way down to the cookie so I don't get a crater. And then I'll add a little highlight to his nose, just making a little line with my white icing. And he needs some fluffy white eyebrows too, I think. So let's just go ahead and squeeze a big ball and then stop squeezing and drag it out to a point to give him some big fluffy eyebrows. It really helps if you have a cookie turntable so you can turn your cookie around to get at it at different angles without having to touch your cookie. If you don't have a turntable, a paper plate works really well. And then I want to give his hat brim some texture, so I'm just going to put a line of icing on his hat brim. Now my hat brim is dry. If yours is not, you might want to wait. I'm just going to use a dampened paintbrush and tap up and down gently at it to create texture, like a fur-like texture or a fluffy texture on the hat brim for this Santa hat. And if you get any icing on the dog where you don't want it, just wipe off your brush and wipe it away. And if you need to add some more icing so that your texture is a little thicker, just go ahead and do that. And then my cookie is actually completely dry, so I used my edible marker to make a little mouth, and then I wanted to outline his ears. So I'm just going to touch down and then lift up and very carefully and slowly follow along the crease and outline the ears on this puppy cookie. So again, you want to just touch down, lift up your icing bag, and follow the line of icing and watch where it's falling as you outline the ears. And I let that dry completely, and now I'm going to go ahead and fill in the ball of his hat, and then I'm going to use some green, red, and white little sprinkle balls on nonpareils and cover the ball of his hat. You still want to use your scribe even though you're going to be covering the ball with sprinkles because it can crater later and you will have an indentation in the middle of your sprinkles. Make sure you use your scribe and get that icing all the way down to the cookie and pop any air bubbles. And now that the sprinkles are on, our Santa Puppy cookie is done. I hope you find him as adorable as I do. Be sure to check the description for all the products that I used so that you can decorate along with me. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to subscribe so you see the rest of the Santa tutorials. See you later.